Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is David Walker. I'm the director of the Shasta-Cascade Small Business Development Center, and we are we have a fairly new addition to these webinars. We have a disclaimer that we need to put up at the beginning that basically says that we're going to give you some education and some information, but we're not giving you professional, financial, or legal advice. So I guess what that means is if you watch this webinar and then decide to go out and buy some Enron stock or something, we're not responsible. But this is our disclaimer. Let me tell you a little bit about the SBDC before we get going. We are a nonprofit that's funded by your tax dollars, the SBA and the state of California. So thank you for paying those taxes. We very much appreciate it. We provide confidential, no-cost assistance to small businesses and entrepreneurs on a one-on-one setting. And we also are able to put on these webinars and these workshops for you. Our center, which is Shasta-Cascade Center, we're located in Redding, California, and our territory is Shasta and Trinity counties, which are very beautiful and very hot. If you are in another area of the country, there's going to be an SBDC near you. All you need to do is Google SBDC near me, and you can find a way to locate your local SBDC to take advantage of the services they offer there. And the only other part of housekeeping I think we have is if you have any questions during this webinar, if you have any questions for Megan, who's going to be giving us all of this wisdom this afternoon, please put your questions in the chat box, and as she pauses and she's ready to take the question, she can do that. So with that, I will leave it to you, Megan. Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, guys, and thanks for just hopping on with us. I'm super excited to be talking to you guys about getting some free publicity, because I think it can be something that feels really daunting. Maybe you learned about it in college, or if you went to business school, PR and all of that. But it's actually way more obtainable than I think most people realize. And so we're going to start really low level today. But just first to introduce myself, I'm Megan Spaulding, as I said. I am a marketing professional, so that's what I do for a living. And my clients have been featured in some pretty fancy places. So you can see some logos right here. Most recently, one of my clients sold out on QVC, so that was pretty exciting. But so I've kind of been around, around the publicity game. I know what it takes to get some free features, and I just want to share that with you guys. So here's what we're going to be going through today. First off, we'll be talking about where we should be pitching in order to get those, that publicity. We'll be talking about what I like to call pitching like a human. So how to pitch effectively, and that includes crafting your pitch, creating a media kit, understanding press releases, those kind of things. And then the last thing we'll touch on is what I call reverse publicity, which is a totally made up term that is kind of what it sounds like. It's actually creating publicity for other people and how we can leverage that to get more traffic to our own sites. So without further ado, by the end of this course, my goal for you is for you to be able to have the knowledge that it takes to go out and start getting free exposure on other people's platforms. So be it blogs, podcasts, social media accounts, or even news and magazines. By the end of this, you should have all the tools you need to be able to effectively do that. So before you begin, we have quite a few people on this webinar. So what I'm going to have you do is drop in the chat just an introduction about yourself. So tell us who you are, what your business is, and then why you're here. And I have the chat right in front of me, so I'll see all of this. The reason I'm having you guys do this is because I really love to give examples as we're going through this process that are really applicable to you. So I'll pull from different things I see pop up in the chat to give examples so that you guys can get some hands-on know-how of what we're talking about and what this looks like in an applicable way. So yeah, I will just let that chat sit open. And again, just go on in there, make sure you're clicking send to everyone so that we can see what you do and why you're here. So first off, the first thing when talking about publicity is where to actually pitch for that publicity. So the first thing that you have to think about when we're going into this is a lot of people might immediately start thinking about those like big name brands like People Magazine or whatever it may be. But those places and even securing features in some big places is relatively useless if your audience isn't there. So where should you pitch for publicity? Well, it really depends on your target audience. So the first thing that we want to do when we are, figuring out what where we're going to pitch is do our research. Do our research into our target audience. First off, if you don't know anything about your target audience, this is something that we would love at the SBDC to walk you through, helping you create an avatar for that person and really define your target audience. So this is something that you can come to us. We're not going to cover it today, but you can come to us and we can do consulting around that. If you're not local to Shasta or Trinity County, then you have local SBDCs that I'm sure would help you walk through this process. But once you have that audience defined of who you're trying to reach and what this publicity is for, because if we're getting free publicity, what kind of people do we want to get in front of? Once we've defined that, then we can begin to do research around it. So the things you want to do, and I highly suggest getting out a pen and paper, or if I'm a pen and paper girl, but if you're a computer person, get out an Excel sheet, whatever it is, and begin just making a master list answering these questions. And again, as David mentioned, you'll get a recording of this. You'll also receive these slides. So you'll have this list at your disposal, but ask the questions and create a long, long list of what social media accounts are your target audience already following, what blogs are they reading, what podcasts are they listening to, what coaches do they follow. Now I'll add more to this one because it's maybe not as obvious, but coaches, they do a lot of features. Either they have blogs themselves, they have podcasts themselves. A lot of them will also put on online events and different things like that, or invite people into their coaching programs to do guest coaching. So that's why we're kind of looking at coaches within or influencers within your target audience that your target audience is already engaging with. Another thing to ask is what events are they attending? So I'm looking at the chat right now. I'm looking at Shannon, who provides IT professional services like cybersecurity and those kind of things. Okay, so what conferences are going on in IT, or specifically right now, especially because of COVID, what online conferences are going on in that space where you can, there's, within any given niche or any given market, there's going to be a ton of like online summits and stuff like that, and they are usually desperate for speakers. And so thinking about where can you reach out to see if they need an expert in your field, someone who knows and can speak to cybersecurity. So these are the reasons we're looking at things like events. Of course, we're looking at what magazines do they like. Now that includes in-print magazines as well as online magazines. And I would not sleep on the smaller magazines. So my family actually owns a printing company, and they print hundreds of magazines. And they have the most niched down magazines. It's unbelievable. There are magazines for like specific horse breeds, like people who love a very specific horse breed, and so digging in deeper to find, what magazines are out there that are super niche. I'm like thinking of one. There is a magazine specifically around vintage lights for one specific type of vintage light, an entire magazine. So you would be surprised what you can find. And so dig deeper into that niche when you're looking at that kind of stuff. And then another question asked is what social media groups are they in? And so specifically Facebook and LinkedIn have really engaged and really effective social media groups. And again, the reason we're asking this is because a lot of those groups will bring in guest experts to teach within their group. So it's just another place that we can potentially get featured for some free publicity. All right, now this one we're going to focus more on the local side. So we're not looking at this for like national campaigns, but on the local level, looking at what your local newspapers are, right? That's a big one. Looking at, are there any local magazines that your target audience is reading that you'd be a good fit for? Or even one that I feel like people don't think about very often is local email newsletters. There are people in your community that are talking to your target audience that all the time that are sending newsletters and telling them what's going on. And you know, I'm thinking about we have a local thing called Taste of Reading, right? And we have all this kind of food stuff, and so finding places where already informing people in Reading about food in Reading to, you know, letting them know, hey, your email newsletter readers might be interested that we're having this event that's centered around food. So, hold on one second. I'm just reading in the chat, seeing if we can't get some more examples for you guys. So we have Venica, who is the owner of Ventures Away Travel, who's a travel concierge and a travel blogger, or yeah, a blogger, travel girl. Awesome. So yeah, thinking about like if we're talking about travel, like you know, what comes to mind as far as like local newsletters is, you know. Sorry, I'm thinking about in Reading, we have something called Visit Reading that's really engaged around travel. And so, you know, reaching out to those kind of places and saying, hey, I'm a local travel blogger. I would love to get featured on your blog and or do some guest posts and those kind of things. So that's what we're talking about when we're looking at like, okay, locally reaching out to people who are around us as well. All right, so moving on with where we should pitch for publicity. The one thing I like to point out is to not be afraid to swing for the fences. I think people are kind of reserved. It feels salesy, right, to pitch yourself in this way. And so it feels kind of scary to reach out to someone in your space that you really respect, or even some bigger named blogs or whatever it may be, but you would be surprised how many people are going to say yes, because there's some real value in them. For one, they need content, especially in 2020. The amount of blogs that are put out on a day-to-day basis, and the amount of social media posts, and the amount of emails, there's so much content that people are putting out to stay warm with their audience. And so in a way, you're doing them a favor, especially on some specific ones. Some of the easier features to get because of this leverage of helping people create content are guest blog posts, where you're actually writing a whole blog for them that they do not have to write or pay someone to write themselves, and getting those blog posts featured on other blogs. And then of course, guest podcast appearances. So those kind of, any way that you can leverage. I think the same can be said about Facebook and LinkedIn groups. Anything that you can leverage to say, hey, I'm going to create this content for you is often a breath of fresh air. And if they see value in your pitch, that you can really add value to their audience, you would be surprised what people will say yes to. The other thing is joining those relevant LinkedIn groups. The reason for this is because often, especially if you find Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups that are specifically for professionals within your niche, you will find people reaching out and asking, hey, like say you're in, let's see, Tiffany, who's an artist, she sells print on demand services to sell her art. So in the artist field, if you're in the space with other artists or there's a lot of creative business owners. So finding a Facebook group specifically around creative business owners, which are other artists, other graphic designers, like those kind of spaces. There are often people posting in those, hey, I'm looking for someone to do a guest blog post. Hey, I'm looking for someone to come on my podcast. So join those Facebook groups and keep a pulse on who in those communities are openly asking for people to come on and be featured on their blogs and on their podcasts or whatever it may be. People are often on there as well with these niche online magazines asking for people to do guest articles and all of these things. Again, people need content, and so they're really open and really excited by the idea of featuring people in this way. Now, here is a key that I like. It reminds me of when I was younger. I was super into music, and I don't even know if Apple Music still has it. But back in the day, at least, they had like the relevant artists. I'm pretty sure they still do. So you would find an artist you like, right? And then you would go down to relevant artists and you would go 5 deep in that relevant artist. And all of a sudden you would find music that you've never heard of, that your friends have never heard of, brand new to you. And it was really exciting to me as a teenage girl. And so we're trying to take that same concept and find more places to pitch, more niche places that maybe we don't know about, that have really strong followings and really loyal followings, because it's not always the big numbers that do the most. There are places out there with 2,000 to 3,000 people in their audience, like relatively small in comparison to some places. But those 2,000 to 3,000 people are like die hard for that brand, are incredibly engaged, and those can be like gold mines. Which actually brings us to the next point, is to not scoff at those people with the smaller followings. I found if you look at, like, if we're talking Instagram followers, people with a 3,000 to 8,000 followers can often be a sweet spot. Now, this isn't true 100% of the time, but for particular niches, there are people that are just like so well trusted and have created these small communities that really, really trust them, that if they put you on their blog, those people are going to flock to them, flock to you, and because they have such strong trust with their audience. So this is why we're looking in, and why I say, finding those 3 to 5 other potential places based on each person or each place you've written in your in answering those questions and where you should pitch. Because that allows us to get deeper and to find those places, find those people, those one-off people on Instagram that you would never accidentally come across in your own just kind of inadvertently scrolling through Instagram, but that do have these super loyal followings and are so respected in your niche. They just take a little bit more digging to find, and they're often worth the dig. So definitely take the extra time to not just go top of mind, but to push deeper and see, okay, when you research this, what can you find? Either through, Instagram in particular, I think is helpful because it has the actual, you can go to someone's account and see, hey, other accounts that are suggested, and you can find things that you didn't know were there. You can Google search, hey, and you can look at another thing. If they have like a podcast, you can look at other people who have been guests on their podcast. That's a great way to find like these deeper people that could be really rich and really great for your business, and often maybe even easier to kind of get in with and network because they're smaller. All right, I feel like I've been talking a real long time. So even though there's not a question slide here, I'm gonna stop for just a second and let you guys ask questions. So you guys can either send some questions in the chat, or if you wanna unmute yourself, you can ask your questions out loud as well. We don't have any questions so far. All right, nothing so far, so I will keep going then. And again, feel free, I'm watching this chat as best I can, so if you have questions pop up as I'm talking, we will have times when when I stop and I'll have questions like this. So don't stress too much, but I'm here and I'm happy to answer your questions, so don't sit on questions. So, okay, going deeper into reaching out. So we have our list, right? We've gone through the people, we've figured out where our target audience is, who they're interacting with, and we've gone even deeper and done even further research. And we've found people that we didn't even know existed that have these rich audiences, right? So now the question is, okay, but how do we reach out? How do we reach out to even get a chance to be featured on their blog or on their podcast or in their magazine or whatever it is? So first off, the very first thing in these, with these companies or these spaces is to do your research to find out who that decision maker is to the best of your ability. Often with smaller audiences, it's going to be really obvious. It's going to be, you know, if it's a relatively small podcast, it's probably the podcast host, right? When you get bigger, you're going to have to do more work. When you're talking about a newspaper, you're going to have to do more work because you're not only looking at, okay, who's a journalist at this newspaper, you're looking at who's a journalist within this specific column and this specific space. You know, if you're in sports, then you're looking for the sports journalist contact at your local newspaper. You don't want to be reaching out to someone else. So finding out who the decision maker is that's applicable to this particular pitch. And then there are softwares out there that can actually help you find the emails of these decision makers. So I've named a few here, and again, you'll get these slides, but Rocket Reach, Hunter.io, Walla, Norbert are just a few. There are tons and tons and tons of ways out there to find emails for people. Another thing, if you're not able to find an email, you can often find people on LinkedIn. People are all often open to connecting on LinkedIn. So when in doubt, reach out on LinkedIn or Instagram. Those are the two places that I feel like people are most open to receiving business messages. Now, if it is something that is maybe related to a Facebook group, like you're in the same Facebook group, then Facebook might be appropriate if you've like kind of had touch points on Facebook, then go ahead and reach out over Facebook Messenger. But LinkedIn or Instagram seem to be the two places that people are okay. And then of course their email, that people are okay with being reached out to around business stuff. And then as you're reaching out, an important thing to remember is to make sure that we are following up, and don't be afraid to follow up, because what we're about to walk through is how to, like I said, pitch as a human. We're going to be really warm, we're going to be really engaging, we're going to be super friendly, and they're not going to feel like they're being sold to us, or that we're trying to take something from them, you know. So the follow-up is key, because I often have found that people are way less annoyed than we actually think they are. And so don't be afraid to follow up a few days afterwards, maybe two or three times, you know, of course, spaced out, maybe once a few days later, once a week after that, once maybe a month after that, and then you can kind of just let it be. But one of the rules of sales is that it often takes 7 touch points for people to kind of stick in your mind. And so the same thing goes for here. You don't want to just touch base with someone once. You want to touch base with them in multiple ways. And so follow-up's a great way. Another great way I found is actually start engaging. If you want a feature on their blog or on their podcast or whatever it is, engage with them, engage with their accounts, engage with their podcast account. Because, and again, especially in the smaller ones, the people, you know, who are the decision makers often run their own social media too. And so if they see your names popping up on their social medias and you're engaging with their company in other ways, that's another great way to create those touch points and kind of become a familiar face to them. All right, so here's our first actual slide. Do we have any questions so far before we start moving on? Again, you can unmute yourself, or you can put a question in the chat. Oops. All right. If there aren't any questions, are we good to go? Good to keep going? Then we will keep going. Okay, all right, let's talk about actually crafting your pitch. So we have our list, we have our plan in place, and we're ready. We've got the emails, we know who we're gonna contact. So what are we gonna say to them? What are we gonna say to them? What information do they need? All of those kind of things. So first off, I need you to repeat after me. I need this burned in your brain. No canned emails. They can be relatively effective, but you will get a lot of annoyed people. And it's so easy to create a flexible template that you can personalize each time, that it's really not worth the people and that you're gonna lose to just send a blanket, same thing every time, doesn't matter who you just changed the name. It is going to go so much further, and it's gonna really stand out from any other pitches that they're receiving, because I guarantee you there are a lot of people using a canned email and just sending it, the same exact email to everyone, saves time, but taking a few extra minutes per email to just adjust a flexible template to fit that specific person is really gonna make you stand out against the crowd. The example I like to use is my husband he's actually a corporate recruiter, and he specializes in tech. And so in the tech space, they're in such high demand, it's not even a joke. Like, people need developers, especially good ones. And so on LinkedIn, these developers are messaged like every single day with job offers like in and out. My husband was able to kill it in his career because he was one of the few that actually took the time to personalize the very first little paragraph in his pitch as to why this person should apply. His response rate was out of this world better than other people within his same company. And so it just goes to show, like, people get pitched to, you know, for publicity, actually not as much as other things, but people are constantly being sold to. And so they're really susceptible to know when something hasn't been personalized to them. They feel it. And so it's really important we take that additional time to just put a touch of love and to touch a specific details to them so that they really feel like, oh, wow, like they're just not, you know, messaging every blog on the planet to get a feature. They really love my blog, and they took the time to engage with me. So it immediately makes you stand out. The next thing is, of course, be personable. So I say connection above selling, especially in this place. You do not want to come off like you're trying to sell them something. Now, you do want to come off telling them, you know, as a professional and as someone who is worth your weight and as someone who is credible. Credible? Yeah, I think that's the word. We want to put ourselves in the best light, and there is some selling to that, right? There is some, hey, I'm like actually like would be a great fit for this, right? But any place that we can put within the copy of that body, that's a connection. And that can be as simple as like, oh my gosh, I read your latest blog post and it just blew my mind. I could talk about this subject for days, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's just those places that we can make it human and we can connect with them. And then we can go into, and we'll go into like the specifics of the outline of the pitch, but, you know, going into, even as you're pitching, like, I think I would be a great fit because like, oh my gosh, can you even just see us? Like, you're so good at this and I'm so good at this. Like, I think if we partnered together to create some messaging for your audience, oh my gosh, it would be incredible. You know, there's ways to make it feel like a connection, not that you're just trying to sell yourself for your own benefit. So as much as you can lean on that, the more susceptible people are going to be. The next thing that we'll go over is including what's called a media kit. We're going to go over a one-page media kit today. I found, especially in these smaller spaces, that it's way less overwhelming, and especially if it's a first pitch, way less overwhelming to attach a one page rather than a full-on folder with all of your logos. Like, that is, nobody's ever going to touch that if this is the first time that they're hearing from you. So creating a one page that can quickly show them who you are, and I'm getting into way more details because we'll talk about it in a minute. And then also, you know, talking about press releases only where they're applicable. You do not need to send a press release with every pitch. In fact, most will not require one, but we'll at least go over them for when they are applicable. All right. So when crafting our pitch template, and when I'm talking about our pitch template, I'm talking about the actual body of our message. So if it's an email, it's the email you're sending, right? If it's a message on social media, it's the actual message. So this is what we're talking about when crafting this pitch. So the first thing we want to do is we want to start with a personalized interest that is really specific to them. And again, this is, I like the example I used, like, hey, I just read your most recent blog. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. And show that you actually read the last blog. Or another thing could be, oh my gosh, I'm such a huge fan. Like, I've been following you forever. Like, I just think you are so smart about this. I mean, don't be afraid to brown nose them. Don't be afraid of that. But also make sure that you are catching their attention. And right here is a good place to kind of put a hook, like, oh my gosh, I think this is amazing. And I think that, like, together we can really, like, skyrocket this particular teaching in your audience. Let's see, I'm trying to think. I'm reading through the chat to see if I can get you guys a specific example, because I'm being a little vague right now. Let's see. We have Sierra, and she is starting a business online that will eventually sell course content, teaching resiliency and personal power. She's trying to leverage free webinars, podcasts, and of course, Instagram. Okay, so she's selling courses in this case. And so, like, you know, pitching, I'd be curious what the courses are about. Let's say it's a marketing course. So when you're going to, and that's probably not what it is, but when you're pitching, you know, going to these people and saying, oh my gosh, like, even within marketing, maybe you're like a social media guru. And so you're going and you're saying, oh my gosh, you are like you're going to a blog that's about marketing, let's say, sorry. And you're saying, oh my gosh, you're just the marketing queen. Like, you know, I have like this passion for social media and I would love to just give your audience a deep dive. So start with something that's specific to them and is, you know, engaging and kind of right off the bat maybe catches their eye, catches their interest, and makes them want to keep reading. The next thing is to make sure you are telling them why you're reaching out, of course, right? So if it's a blog, that they have a blog feature on, or that you're looking for a blog feature on, letting them know like, hey, I would love to do a guest post on your blog. If it's a magazine that you want to have an article featured in, make sure that they know what it is that you're reaching out for. What is it that you're asking for? What do you need from them? And then, oh, hold on 1 second. We have someone unmuted microphone. I'm gonna just find that real quick. Hope I can't. I don't see. I think we're muted back. Okay, we're good. So, and then as you're telling them why you're reaching out, again, like with that painting the picture of what a partnership could look like, what you're envisioning, what you would want to write about if it's a blog, what you would want to share about if it's a podcast, whatever it is, like paint them a picture of like, this could be the best podcast you've ever had. This is the amazing information that I have that I would love to share with your audience. And make sure as you're doing that you're tucking in your credentials. If there's anything fancy, if you have any degrees, certificates, if you've been featured anywhere else, if you've had some success, some standout success that's worth mentioning, just kind of tucking those in very natural places, in just kind of like talking them through like what it could look like partnering with you. Then also always let them know you're attaching something if you have a media kit, and we'll go through when it's appropriate and when it's not. To have a media kit or a press release, then let them know that there's something attached for them to check out, because otherwise they might miss it. And so I know it sounds silly, but it's something that we want to know and make sure that we're telling them. And then the very last thing that you want to wrap the pitch up with, and it is so, so important because you will get so much better response, is to finish with a call to action. And so tell them, like, what's the next step here? And so that often looks like, hey, I would love to set up a time to chat. And not only that, often, and this is actually a sales tactic, give them a time. Be like, hey, I would love to set up a time to chat to see if this could work. What does next Tuesday at 2 look like for you? And I don't know, but I should have probably looked up the science behind that. But for whatever reason, it is highly effective in getting people to actually respond and engage with that, and can be actually more effective than sending out calendar invites. And just allowing them to choose, and then they never get around to it. It's just really direct, to the point. Tells them what to do, tells them when you're available, and then and then they're able to then respond and say, hey, that's a great time, or they'll respond with, hey, that doesn't work for me, but here's what my schedule's like. But always, always, always finish with a call to action, something to allow that next step for, like, I would love to touch base, I'd love to get on a phone call, I'd love to hop on Zoom, you know, whatever that would be, to make that next step in getting that feature. Or even like, I would love to hear, you know, if it's something bigger, you know, I would love to hear about your application process or whatever it may be. But something that allows them to, you know, kind of forces the issue of them responding to you. All right, so we'll pause again for questions. If there are any questions, again, you can put them in the chat, or we can talk about them out loud. Okay, well, you have
Megan, sorry, apparently people are having trouble unmuting themselves. It says allow participants to unmute themselves, but for whatever reason, it's apparently not doing it. At least I'm getting some messages that way. So,
okay.
You know, I apologize for that. I'm not sure what's going on.
Hello, David. Does it work now?
Oh, it's working now. There's Michael. Okay. Hey, I don't know what I did, but I'm magic.
We're
so
loud.
There you go. Okay.
Awesome. Well, are there any loud questions? Are there any people unmuted for questions? I have a question in the chat that we can address right now. So Kathy asks, what if we're still learning how to be a personality able to do a smooth interview? So you don't have to break out the gate with podcast or audio interviews. If you're not comfortable with that, there are tons of other places to receive that publicity. Again, with blog posts, I've talked a lot about guest features, but you can pitch, and I'm sorry I haven't mentioned this, but you can just pitch your product for them to write a blog about or include it in a list, if it's a product or service. So there's often a lot of lists out there, as I'm sure you're familiar with, around Christmas time of like best Christmas gifts. That's a great way to reach out to blogs and be like, hey, I think this product would be really smashing for your Christmas list because it's super unique and blah, blah, blah. So it's not just about interviews, there's tons of places, guest blog posts, blog features where someone actually writes an article about you, your local newspapers, your local email list, all of those kind of different places. If you want to get into interviewing on podcasts and you want to really hone that skill and get that smooth interview process down, then just for really, really small podcasts. There are people out there that only have a handful of followers, there are a lot of podcasts. I wish I had this statistic in front of me, but there's people with only 50 to 100 people listening to their podcast. I mean, even less. You could probably find podcasters who have 3 listeners. And so start out small, start out places, and just don't be afraid to fail, because it's going to take practice, and you're going to be better than you think. And so practicing on places that don't feel as scary because they have lower listenership, and also the people with lower listenership are often more desperate for guests as well. And so, just feel free to reach out and do your research to find those people who just have hobby podcasts, who are just really low risk, and people in small Facebook groups as well is a good place to get kind of adjusted with that. And then there are some Facebook groups out there. The only one I can think of right now is paid, but I bet you could find other ones where they actually allow their members to go live so that they can practice just talking about their specialty. And so I would look into those kind of places as well to get, comfortable with podcast interviewing. Is there anything else? Any other questions? Again, it sounds like unmuting is fixed, so feel free to unmute yourself, or you can send a chat in the chat box.
Megan, this is Michael. It indicated to send out specific, contact information tailored to that organization or person.
Mm-hmm.
What if, for whatever reason, they don't respond? Do you continue to send? How often do you send? Do you have any, input in that area?
Yeah, so typically I think we had touched on this a little bit with the follow-up. So if you're doing follow-ups, I think a standard kind of pattern is, follow up maybe 3 to 5 days later, and then a week after that, and then a month after that. At that point, if you really want to keep following up, you can, but once you kind of hit them about 4 times with an email, it's not impossible that they won't follow up, but that's or respond. But of course, the odds go down. Another thing is reaching out to them if they don't respond via email. You can also check out their social medias, because you might not have the right email. And so, can you find them on social media, and can you message them there? Just making sure that you're being tactful in your follow-ups, and you can even I saw a follow-up one time that it was silly. It was something like, I'm not sure why you haven't responded. I mean, it was cuter, it was nicer than that, but like either you've, what was it? Oh my gosh, it was cute. It was like, either you haven't seen my email or you've fallen and you can't get up. If you've fallen and you can't get up, let me know and I'll send help. Like it was, you know, just, you can be cute and, you know, just funny and engaging. And I found, we just went through, this is kind of unrelated, but kind of related. We just went through a house closing process and it was super, super stressful and things weren't happening on time. We closed about a week late than what we were supposed to. And so I was the most annoying home buyer on planet Earth. Like I was calling people every 5 minutes. Hey, has the next step been done? Because we were late and I needed to get out of the house that we were in. And, you know, we needed to make sure it closed by a certain date. And so every time I would call the title company to annoy the poor woman for the 20th time that day, I would say something to the effect of, hey, I know that I am being super annoying. I know I'm a crazy person. I promise I'm really nice, but I'm really stressed out right now. Can you please let me know where you're at in the process? And even though I was bothering her to death, like literally calling her every 30 minutes and I know she has a job to do, we created this rapport and she didn't mind that I was bothering her because I could be like kind of authentic and vulnerable with the fact that like, I know I have like called you 20 times today, but I'm a crazy person and it's me, not you. Can you please, you know, let me know what's going on? And so there's just tactics like that that you can just continue to make it personable and, you know, not salesy and connect with them in that way. That can be really engaging and get people to kind of laugh and be like, okay, I'll give this kid a shot. So that's my suggestions as far as, you know, I tend to suggest about 4 emails max, and then if you want to switch to their social media, or if you want to switch, you know, after 2 emails, switch to their social media and see if you can't get a hold of them for the next couple. But try different ways, and sometimes even on those, if you look for their email on those different apps, sometimes you'll get a few email options. So yeah, just checking it out and seeing if maybe you don't have the right email. Definitely, especially if it's a feature that you really, really want, that you're really, really passionate about. If it's something that you're like, I could take it or leave it, you know, give as much time as you see value in securing that publicity. All right, is there anything else before we start moving on? What if our product, Elizabeth in the chat asks, what if our product isn't directly related to their podcast? If your product isn't directly related to your podcast, there is a good chance that their podcast is not geared to your target audience. But also there's a decent chance it could be. You know, I think what's coming to mind is you hear all kinds of podcasts, especially the really popular one. What is it, Brookshire bed sheets that are advertising on every single podcast? That's often, if you're not related, it's often a better fit for advertising if the target audience is actually there. It normally won't make sense for the podcast to bring you on if you're totally unrelated. If it's a podcast about marketing and you're talking about birds, they're gonna be like, it's gonna be really confusing to their audience of like, why do we have this bird expert on this podcast? And so making sure you're pitching to places where it actually makes sense, where you're a natural fit for their audience, because it's going to be the best for you anyways. Because if their audience, if you fit into that podcast and what they're talking about, then their audience is likely your target audience. And so it just goes back to that target audience question. All right, is there anything else before we start moving on? We have time for probably one more question. All right, we will keep going then. Oops, sorry, I accidentally went backwards in my slides, or forward, I skipped a whole section. Okay, so let's talk about media kits. So I said already that we're focusing on those one-page media kits that are easily attachable. It's quick information. It's just an 8x11 sheet that gives these people the information that they might want to know. Now, what is a media kit? I'll show you an example on the first page, but more or less they are simple snapshots of like a visual, almost infographic about you with the standout information that they need to know. And what they do is they help give you credibility. They help the reviewer, whoever you're contacted, see what you can kind of do for them, because media kits are focused on like your own audience, your own audience size, your own web traffic, and those kind of things. And so when you have something impressive or even other features that they can look and say, oh my gosh, this person's been featured here, or this person has crazy web traffic, that's like a bonus for them, because then if they feature you and you push to their website or whatever it is, you tell their audience about it, that gets them traffic. So what a media kit does, it just kind of further sweetens the deal. Now, if you don't have any noteworthy credentials, or if you don't have much web traffic, if you're like putting numbers like we have 20 web visitors per month, or small numbers, that is fine. Just don't include a media kit. You're going to be really a lot stronger just doing the pitch. They don't need to know that you have a small audience. They don't need to know any of that. Pitch well and give them value in that pitch, and they're still, you still have a good shot of getting that publicity. But where a media kit comes in handy is really sealing that deal. And so if you have some impressive numbers, some impressive credentials, then it just makes you look like the best. And so attaching that when it's applicable and when it makes you look good, because the most important thing is that you want yourself to be put in the best light. The other thing is, when you're looking at your media kit one page, is to really, if you have the capacity, if you have the resources, or if you're able to pay someone to do it, is to design that page, because it really helps you stand out. You can of course send a Microsoft Word document, but that often reads a lot like an email, and so it might be more efficient to just put that information on, like, hey, here's some details, bullet points in your email. But if you can get it designed like the one I'm about to show you, then that's really going to, kind of create a wow factor. And there is like this, this sexiness with brands, right? When you see something that's packaged really well and you're like, I don't know, I just trust this because it looks good. So that's really what we're trying to get, that kind of trust factor that design offers. So here is an example of what a media kit could look like. This is for a fine artist named Ali Datalio. And so you can see here it's showing her Instagram traffic, which she has a strong Instagram following. It's showing her engagement, her impressions. So she's reaching 60,000 people per week. Shows her web traffic. So this is a really good example. And then of course it has her bio. So let's walk through what, kind of the different pieces you want included on the media kit. And of course you can see here, this is really well designed. Someone who gets this, it just feels professional. It feels like she knows what's up, that she'd make a great feature on whatever it is, because it just makes her feel trustworthy. So your one pager should include, first off, your bio. Like, let them know who you are, what you're about, just like that personal touch. It should definitely have your contact information on it. The other thing it should have is links to your website and social media account, your website traffic numbers. Again, this is only if you have some impressive web traffic numbers, or impressive social media analytics. Now, if you have super impressive social media, like you have like 100,000 followers on social media, but nobody comes to your website, which is probably unlikely. But if that's the case, then focus on that social media. Again, it's about painting yourself in the best light. So you want to include your outstanding credentials. So maybe if you've had so sorry, if you've had awards that you've won, then fantastic. If you've done certain certifications, or maybe you have your doctorates or those kind of things, like making sure that that information, those like standout credentials are features here. I also like to include links to previous features, especially if it's something that's super impressive or super well done, things you're really, really proud of, places they can just link through and say, oh my gosh, like listen to your podcast interview, see your guest feature, see that time that you were on, you know, Forbes list for whatever, all those kind of places, just, you know, creating some quick links there. And then if you've been featured in well-known places, I highly, highly suggest that you feature their logos on this. If it's something that is easily recognizable, like ABC or NBC, Fox, all those kind of things, or Forbes, or, you know, all those big name brands that people know their logos, I would put those logos on there. For names that maybe people know within your industry but aren't necessarily you know, famous, I would still like include their logos, or at least include like a featured in list with bullet points down. So making sure that, you know, you just like look like a boss who is the most trustworthy, most credible person that they could ever have on their blog, and then also, or podcast or magazine or newspaper or whatever it is, but also you know, highlighting kind of like what you can do for them. And so that's why often they will look at your social media numbers, or at least big social media numbers are super impactful to people, because that says to them, hey, if I feature them here and they push it to their audience, then that's going to give me traffic. So any questions? I have one in the chat already, and that's, could it be a PDF attachment? Yes, so that's what this media kit is. It's just a one-page PDF. Sorry, I wasn't very clear on that. So one-page PDF that, ideally a PDF that's designed out, and then you can make interactive PDFs that have those links that are just really easily clickable. So that's ideally the top choice, it's a PDF. Alternatively, you know, it could be a Word document. I think I would just really consider whether that content is better placed in an email, if it's going to be just a plain Word document. And then, you know, I would not send an image. I wouldn't send a JPEG file, because there's something kind of less professional about that. Even though you can, I would definitely send a PDF. So are there any other questions about media kits or anything we've gone over so far?
Megan, Michael was asking, do you need permission to use their logos?
So often, so most of the big names, you can actually find their policy. It's a mixed bag. There are a lot that allow you to go ahead and use their logo, you know, without asking permission. They do often ask for you to use their brand standards, but I would look up whatever it is. The big names, I'm trying to think, there is one big name, and I think it might be USA Today, that does require you to ask for permission. But most of that stuff, especially for big name brands, they have that if you look up the information on their logo search. And this is a great question. I should definitely include this in this slide. If you look up information on, if you look up their media kit, actually, if you Google search their media kit, so ABC Media Kit, they will have, 9 times out of 10 have a page on their website that is Google searchable that will tell you their policy on when you're allowed to use their logo. And normally that does include, hey, you've been featured, and what their process is on getting that permission, whether it's, hey, you can just have it, we don't care, or whether you have to go through a process. Normally, I mean, as long as you're not fraudulently, I'm sorry, that word is messing me up. As long as you're not lying, let's just say, and tricking people with their logo, generally people want you to use their logo because all it is exposure for them. And so people like being able to see their logo out there. But yeah, definitely reach out to the companies, again, those bigger names that you're probably going to want to use their logo to brag about. They already have policies in place. They're easily searchable online. And then any smaller companies that are maybe more niche down, that maybe don't get as many asks about that, just shoot them an email and ask if you can use their logo. But definitely make sure that you are covered on that. Are there any other questions before we move on? All right, we'll keep going then. All right, so let's talk briefly about press releases. Now, this is, my experience is more in the media kits because I have the most experience in online marketing, so blogs, your podcasts, your all of that, but I wanted to make sure to take a beat and talk about press releases because they're super important, especially when it comes to local businesses, small local businesses. Your local communities want to know what you're up to, and more often than not, a press release is the best way to send that information. And to further that, right now we're going to focus on those local press releases because I'm certainly not an expert on national press release campaigns. But the questions to ask yourself with a press release are, the big overarching question is it newsworthy, right? Why do people care? Why do people care? This is, you're not sending a press release, to show off your knowledge or something like that. But some of the things that, are more appropriate for press releases are if you have a new store opening, right? Your newspaper wants to know that. The people in your community want to know that there's a new store opening. I get annoyed when I can't find on my newspaper, we have new development going on down the road from our new house. And I'm like, why can't I find on my newspaper what's going in here? It drives me crazy. So trust me, the people in your community want to know that you're opening. So store openings, new product launches, local events. If you're holding something that's a local event, that's a great thing to put in a press release and send to your local newspapers, or the other place that this really makes a lot of sense are those local email newsletters that we talked about before. So organizations within your community that are already talking to your target audience that want to let people know what's going on in the community. So local events, humanitarian efforts are sometimes make a great press release. So if you're doing something outstanding, say giving money to the homeless or helping single moms or whatever it may be, that makes for a really good news story. And so consider that for something with a press release. Winning an award, this is a great one. This is a great one to go to the business section of your local paper that you've won some award. And then of course there's major news like such as a merger, acquisitions, those kind of things that might be appropriate to send to the business column on your local newspaper. I don't think I finished this sentence on my slide. I'm so sorry. It's supposed to say to send to those local news outlets as well as those local email newsletters. So I'm sorry that's not fixed. I will update that before it gets emailed out to you. But so we just went over that. There's a lot of places, and it's often really easy to get featured in these newsletters because that's what they're for. They're literally to tell people about what's going on in your community. And so I know if any of you are chamber members as well, there are often, at least in the Reading Chamber, there are benefits to certain levels of chamber membership that you can send emails out, have it email blasted to the local chamber members. And so like just thinking about and looking into those things. But those are often great places because the people are looking for rich and exciting things going on in their community to share. The thing you want to note here with press releases is to make sure that you are only sending this, and this is pitches in general, make sure you're sending it to the relevant people. So don't send an announcement about your store opening to a sports columnist. He's going to be super annoyed with you because that is not applicable to him. Don't mass send it to the whole newspaper because you really want it featured. That is like the fastest way to get blocked and put in spam folders because nobody wants that. So only send it to who it makes sense to, who's in charge of that column, or who's in charge of that newsletter or whatever it may be. Don't spam people. Let's see, so I have that note twice. And the other thing is you do not want to send a press release when it's a general pitch. So everything we've kind of talked about before is more general pitch, like, hey, I would love to write a guest blog, I would love to do this. Like, press releases are for those newsworthy things that are super timely, whereas the general pitches are kind of like, they could happen whenever. There's no time sensitivity, there's no, it might still be exciting, but it's not like it has to happen right now, something that's happening next week. So that's kind of a, good indicator. But when you're sending those general pitches, you don't need to type up a full press release for those things. Just type up your pitch, add your media kit, and then you guys can coordinate together what that publicity is going to look like as it makes sense for whatever platform you're pitching to. So let's go over real quick. We have a question in the chat that I'll just go over real quick. If there are maybe 3 people at a newspaper who might be interested, is it still considered spamming to send it to those 3, but not the whole newspaper? That's a good question. I think it would probably depend on the size of your newspaper. If you're in like a really big city and they have like 100 billion journalists on their, like New York Times, right? New York Times, it would make sense to send it to maybe 3 different people that it would make sense for their article. But at smaller, like local newspaper, I might send it to the person. I don't know, you might be able to CC it in. I'm not sure. I'm actually have never, I would maybe send it on like the same email if you would like genuinely think, hey, this makes sense for all 3 of them. It's applicable because maybe they're all business article writers or, whatever it is, if it's applicable. But I would kind of feel out the culture of your local newspaper and the hierarchy at your local newspaper and see if you can't get a pulse on that. Like ask around, see if there's other people who have done press releases with your local newspaper and just kind of feel out what that, what they've done in the past and what their suggestions are and who's the best person to email, because that's something you can kind of get a pulse on is like, who's the journalist who actually emails back or who actually pulls these press releases more often than not, to find who's the most appropriate person to reach out to. So ask around your community, ask your chamber, I think ask your local SBDC if that's not us, they might have good intel on who's the best person to reach out to. So what's included in a press release? So first off, press releases are written just like a news article. So they're not sales pitches. They're very kind of cut and dry. If I remember press releases from college, I've like wrote so many press releases. I just would remember if I got too emotional, I would get in trouble and not the best grade. So the big things you want to look for in a press release is that catchy headline, something that's going to immediately grab the attention of whoever's reading it. And make them think, oh my gosh, I think this would be really interesting. That's what news is right now. It's catchy. They're looking for the catchiest thing they can put out there. They're looking for things their readers are going to read. And so kind of hooking them in with that headline is the most important thing you can do, as well as the subject of your email body, of your email. Then you want to create like a strong lead. So this is just one sentence on what the article is about. Usually these include a for immediate release line, which you can Google search what that kind of looks like. And then of course you have your actual press release body. So this is the actual content of the press release. Again, it's written like a news article. You don't want to make them too long. I think they're generally around 3 to 4 paragraphs. And then as you're writing that body, you want to make sure that sources are included in that body, because this, you know, as you can imagine in news, sources are really, really important. So if you have any statistics, if you have any quotes, that needs to be conveyed so that they have all the information they need to properly source that. And then the last thing you'll include is a short company description. This is kind of boilerplate that you will include on any and all press releases. And then you want to make sure you include your contact information on this press release so that people know who to contact to get more information for an article if they choose to move forward. All right, any questions for now? Just wait a second. All right, we will keep going then. If you are having any trouble unmuting yourself, feel free to just message in the chat. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about reverse publicity. Now, as I told you at the beginning of this is a made-up term. It's a Megan term. This is just what I call it. And what I consider reverse publicity to be is creating a space to feature other experts in the field in order to get their audiences and their people onto your websites or familiar with your brand, or in order to connect with their audiences, their existing audiences. And so we can do this or leverage it by creating a number of different things. So this can look like, you know, creating a blog that you can have those guest features. So you can understand why I'm saying reverse, because a reverse publicity, so whereas we're pitching for these features, in this way, we're actually creating these spaces so that other people can come onto our platforms and inviting people that we want, inviting the industry leaders, inviting these fancy people to come on, be featured in our spaces so that we can then hopefully, you know, they share with their audiences and then traffic is pushed to us, people become aware. So it's just kind of the flip side of it. So it's interesting. So not only can we go out and be featured places and get that free publicity, but also by featuring other people in our spaces, it's another great way to increase engagement and get yourself some free eyes and free traffic as well. So going on with this list, you know, you can create a podcast that is an interview style podcast so that you can have those people on. You can allow people to do, I don't know if you've seen like the social media takeovers, where you will allow people to create your social media content for a day or a couple days, or maybe they'll go live in your on your social media accounts or these different things, or you'll do a live interview with them on social media. Another thing is in those social media groups, if you create a social media group, then you can have guest speakers coming into your group and teaching to your people, and they will often, you know, if that's a goal of yours to create to grow a Facebook group or something, or a LinkedIn group, those speakers will often share, and people will have to come into your Facebook group in order to watch their teaching. And then another one is online events. So creating your own online event or online summit where people, industry leaders can come and speak. You would be amazed who's willing to speak and be on podcasts for free. And so, you know, just creating these spaces where people can come on, you can get some relatively big name people for no cost because it is publicity to them. And then also leverage their existing audience. So, you know, really utilizing these spaces is, you know, we're going to be reaching out to the experts and the influencers that are already being engaged with by their target audience. So they're already the favorite people that your audience likes to listen to, they like to engage with, and inviting them in, so that, and with the hopes and desire that their audience is going to follow them onto that platform to listen. With this, same rule goes, always follow up. If you want someone on to come on and do a guest blog, if you want someone to come on the podcast, don't be afraid to follow up. You know, that same kind of pattern applies, you know, follow up in a few days, follow up in a week, follow up in a month, switch it up, try to reach them in different places, because different people like to communicate different ways. And don't be afraid to go after those big fish, because you would just be surprised who's going to say yes. People are eager to share, and they're just as eager as you are to get free publicity. And so creating those spaces and allowing people to talk in those spaces, it is, first off, a huge, like, it makes people feel good, right? It's a confidence boost anytime someone asks someone to share on their space. Even if they don't have time for it, nobody's mad about being asked for that. Like, it makes you feel good. And so it strokes their ego, I say here. It offers them also further credibility. So the more places they speak, the more places they share, the more credibility they have. And so it's a win-win situation, kind of creating these spaces. You'll include, when you reach out to these people, you include a pitch as to why you think that they'd be the perfect fit, why you want to have them on. Don't be afraid to, just stroke their ego and just tell them how great they are. This is a much easier pitch, right? Because you are offering them something, not just offering them, some content or an idea to share on their blog. You're actually offering them exposure to people that they don't currently have exposure with. And then the other thing that I like to state here is to make sure that you are clear with your expectations. So it's a little faux pas to require them to share on their platforms, but 9 times out of 10, if you ask, they're willing. And so don't be afraid to say, hey, I would really love it if you would share this on your Instagram stories, or on your Facebook, or on your LinkedIn, or whatever platform makes the most sense for where your target audience is. Do not be afraid to ask them, and to, just say, hey, here's what I would love. And that sometimes comes at the beginning, but I think more often it's more natural to, when it goes live or soon after it goes live, hey, this is going to go live on this date. I would love it if you could share it with your audience. Sometimes it's effective to go ahead and create a graphic they can share on social media, and say, hey, here's a graphic if you wanted to share, no pressure. Again, I say it right here, it's often faux pas to require it, and it can be a turnoff. But 99% of the time, if you ask for it but don't require it, they're going to do it. And so I strongly encourage to just make it super casual. And yeah. So, all right. So that's all we have for that kind of reverse publicity. Do we have any questions about that? You can go ahead and unmute yourself, or again, you can message in the chat. See, I don't see anything coming through the chat quite yet. This is actually the last thing that we're going to be covering. So if you have any questions, we'll start going into wrap up after this.
So Megan, this is Lonnie, and I'm a consultant. I do work in downtown revitalization and economic development work, and work with a lot of municipalities and different organizations. And I think one thing I learned was, your toolkit is great because all of that is support documents or support information to empower us to put ourselves out there and offer to be the expert or offer to do the podcast. And, it's not easy to walk through that because we're afraid of what we don't know. Fear is what we don't know. But once you do it and then you feel great, and then you have new content for your own website or your own social media podcast. And so, I just would encourage, and I've been doing this for about 28 years, and just jump in and do it, because all they're going to say is, no, not right now, but you made the connection, right? And how important is, I think it's really important, but I'd like for you to stress and talk about it from your perspective, how important networking is.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, everything you said is true. And that's what, I keep saying, like, you would be surprised who's going to say yes. But even when they don't, it often, if you are, genuinely show some care and some love in your pitch, and you're not just trying to push a sale on them, it is amazing how that can quickly turn into, even if it's no, can quickly turn into a great networking opportunity. And it's vitally important, like growing that network, and growing those people who trust you and are in your industry. It can work wonders for your business, because not only as you're building these connections and as you're being featured other places, are other people seeing you, and other people wanting to feature you in their places, and you can just see how that's this ripple effect. But also creating those connections, one of the biggest ways, actually the biggest, it has been the biggest impact on my business, has been my network, because these people who didn't know you before now know you. And think about this, if you pitch to some fancy person, and it's a no for now, but maybe a smaller blog comes and asks them, like, hey, will you feature, I'm looking for a feature on this, let's say on, I don't know, I used birds earlier. I'm looking for someone who knows a lot about peacocks. Would you like to come on this? And this is the peacock expert of the world. And they say, I don't have time for that. But imagine this, they go, oh, you know what? But that person who has a peacock podcast emailed me, whatever, and we've been kind of conversing or whatever, and I think they might be a good fit. And so there's a numerous uncountable ways that networks can work for you. Or can give you referrals for business, or can suggest, like, maybe you're a product-based business and they don't want to feature you on their blog, but because it doesn't quite fit the vibe or whatever it is. Let's say you sell bath bombs, like, oh, I don't really want to feature a bath bomb on my Christmas list. I featured one last year, but then their friend asked for a bath bomb reference. Well, all of a sudden, oh wait, I just heard of this new bath bomb, right? So it's just vitally important, reaching out not only in this way, which can create so many connections and friendships. I can't tell you, like, how many friendships I've created through just like pitching and being on different podcasts or whatever. But just kind of the ripple effect of what those relationships can be, and just networking in general, and showing up to those places, showing up to live events or conferences where you can meet other people and create these connections in person, is another great way to just expand that network even more. Is there any other questions? But before we move on and start wrapping up. All right, then we will keep on going. We'll go ahead and bring this thing home. So in conclusion, we've covered today why we should pitch for publicity, or why. Looking at where your target audience is. Sorry, that should be where you should pitch for publicity is where your target audience is, and the different places you can pitch for, which are blogs, podcasts, magazines, news outlets, Facebook and LinkedIn groups. We talked about pitching like a human, being engaging, being friendly, not using canned emails, but using those templates that you can easily flex and that are flexible, you can easily adjust so that it feels really personal to whoever is receiving it. That we're being personal, we're being kind, that we're only including a media kit or press release when it makes sense, and that we are not being afraid to follow up. One of the best business advice I think I ever got was, I was actually there's this thing called Startup Weekend that they're all over the world, and you go and you create a business over 54 hours. And one of the things you have to do is client research. And it's competition. So you want to like message as many people as you can for this research. And they were encouraging us to text everyone in our phone book. And I was like, oh my gosh, no, I don't want to bother people. And the point was brought to me that they're not even going to remember that you bothered them. Like, they will not remember this. It's a way bigger deal for you than it is for them. And so I would say the same thing about pitching. This is way more of a big deal for you. It feels way scarier. It feels like you're going to bother them. You're not. Best case scenario is they respond. Worst case scenario is they don't respond and they forget the email was ever sent. So it's really, really low risk. So don't be afraid to push past that fear. And of course, we talked about that reverse publicity. So creating those spaces where you can feature experts. And, you know, in that also expanding your audience, expanding through their audience, expanding your network. So you're now connected to these experts, connecting to these people that often you'll go on to have relationships with. You know, leveraging those audiences to increase your own brand awareness, increase your own website traffic, and making sure that we're being clear with our expectations, but not pushy. We're not forcing them necessarily to share, but just making sure we're verbalizing it, because like the worst feeling is when they don't share and you're really bummed out, but you never asked them to. You're going to have way more success rate and people actually sharing what their audience is if you actually ask them to. If you go the extra step to create a graphic, even better. And don't be afraid to follow up across the board with your pitches, with whether it's asking for publicity or asking for people to share on your platform. Don't be afraid to follow up. Again, it's a bigger deal for you than it is for them. I promise they really, really aren't annoyed. And even if you get one person who's annoyed, it's like 1 out of a million who are actually gonna be annoyed. And so just continue to push on. So that's all we have for today. So are there any final questions? Yeah. You're somewhere unmuted. I don't know. Do we have a question? Or is that David? It's David. All right. All right. So I hope that today you've just like really leveraged, figured out how to leverage that free publicity, and that you now have the first steps in how to go forth and start getting those features on blogs, podcasts, magazines, all those places. So for next steps, for any of you that are located within the Shasta and Trinity counties, we're here for you. Like we mentioned at the beginning of this, we offer free one-on-one consulting. And so if there's anything that you want to talk through, you know, we have our advisors. I'm one of our advisors, as well as Lonnie, who just spoke recently, and of course David, who introduced this. We're here to help you walk through this. We're here to, if you have no clue who your target audience is, we help people every day figure out who they're actually trying to reach and who they're actually trying to talk to. And so if you want specific help for your specific business and what you're doing, then you know, I encourage you to reach out. Now, if you're not located in our area, there are SBDCs all over the country, and so you can contact your local SBD office. All right, they're everywhere, and they're happy to help you, just as happy as we are. And so again, this is totally free to you. Advising totally confidential, so the government knows nothing about you or any of that. It's totally confidential. It's just between you and your advisor what's going on the SBDC. And so we, you know, encourage you to reach out. I did just see one question pop up before we wrap up from Shannon. For podcasts, would you recommend using special equipment in our audio video editor? So if you are, we actually did a webinar not too long ago on how to start a podcast, so we'll have to redo that sometime. So be looking out if we up that again. But if it depends, I'm sorry, I'm processing your question because I'm not sure if you're asking about you being the host or you being a guest. If you're going on guests, most of the podcasts do not require you to have a nice microphone. The audio on in-ear buds with the microphone on the wire is normally plenty of good enough. But anyone who has their own podcast that has interviews has all that information, and they'll give that to anyone who's coming on their podcast interviews. And so yeah, I think that's all we have today. David, do you have anything to add?
I only have one thing. You're going to be getting an email with three things. One will be a link to the video of this presentation. It'll include the slides. And the third thing is a link to an evaluation survey. And we really encourage you to please fill that out. It's how we improve. And we have thick skin, so please be honest. And thank you so much, everybody. We really appreciate you attending and taking the time. And thank you, Megan. It was very good.
All right, thank you guys. We will see you soon.
Bye.